Yeah.
So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I'll just take it now, mate.
I've got a whole bunch of other questions to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks. I'll start on this and I'll hand over to Tom. And then Jarrod and Ann have each got things to say. So you guys good to go? Ann, you good? Good morning, everybody. Testing 1, 2.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Well, thanks, everyone. Queensland is ground zero when it comes to the cost of living crisis, and increasingly it's falling on organisations like Gateway to do the heavy lifting. And if you look at the pressures that are on Queensland families, many of them are things that we, as a state government, would like the opportunity to be able to help drive down. And I'm going to unpack a few of those and how we might be able to play our role, and then partner with organisations like Gateway to ensure that they can continue to grow and continue to serve those who fall through the cracks and need help in our community. The number one cost of living pressure for Queenslanders right now is housing, and whether it's their interest repayments on a home they own or it's the rising cost of rent, it is increasingly taking up a larger proportion of their income each week. Our vision for housing in Queensland is to deliver more infrastructure to open up new opportunities for young people to be able to buy a home or rent a home. We are going to partner with the community housing sector, a sector that has gone backwards over the last 8 years in terms of the number of properties here in Queensland. We want to supercharge them and get them to be part of the solution. And we want social housing to be delivered on time and on budget, and to make sure that we can stop that feeding frenzy that is occurring at the bottom of the market. Electricity remains a major concern for Queenslanders, and in the last prediction for the 12 months ahead, Queensland had the highest predicted increase of anyone in the nation, and it follows some massive rises in recent months. We commit to having maintenance guarantees on our power plants to keep the lights on in Queensland and to keep power prices down. And I am increasingly concerned that after 2 years, some of our major power plants remain offline. And the government said that wasn't going to have an impact on power prices. Well, that has turned out to be wrong. And the Auditor-General, as well as the Competition Authority, have called that for what it is. So we commit to maintenance guarantees to make sure that occurs. Another major cost is insurance. And every time somebody is a victim of the youth crime crisis, whether it's their car getting pinched or their home being broken into, that has a direct correlation on their interest repayments, on their insurance payments, every single time. And we want Queenslanders to know we are serious about driving down the cost of insurance for them. So we are going to get serious about dealing with the youth crime crisis, and it starts with consequences for action, unshackling the judiciary and removing detention as a last resort, and gold standard early intervention to turn kids around. And if we do that, we will put pressure on the rising cost of insurance in people's homes, in their cars, and that will have a direct ability on what they can do to address these concerns. And the concerns are real. And I'm going to hand over to Tom now, and he will explain the work of an amazing Queensland charity. And increasingly, as Queenslanders are impacted by rising cost of living, it's organisations like Gateway that are doing the heavy lifting. Good morning, Tom. Thanks very much, mate.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the Leader of the Opposition Party to come and witness firsthand the efforts of Gateway Care. We are a charity organisation that helps about 1,500 families each week with with groceries in our store. We rescue a lot of food from supermarkets on the Sunshine Coast, and 21 supermarkets that are all rallying to help families. What we do need is the business community to get on board with us and help fund our infrastructure costs and our operating costs. So it costs quite a lot of money to support 1,700 families a week, where their average spend is just $30. That can go a long way to support them in meeting their other rising living costs, like their electricity costs and their rental costs, etc. So again, we're very grateful for you coming and being a part of seeing what we're doing here, and we're doing what we can to help families in our community. Thank you.
Any questions for Tom?
Yeah. So what kind of things do you think that you can collaborate with the government to help the cost of living?
Sure. Our model is such that it is a self-sustaining model. So if we have a contribution towards setting up our infrastructure, in this facility, we've been here since 2010 and virtually outgrown the facility. So now we've taken on additional warehouse space, and so each time we set up additional facilities with warehouse space, in come another 1,000 families that we can support. So if we have the infrastructure, then we can do more to help more families.
And how is the cost of living crisis impacting?
We're finding that there's a new level of need arising. So people that are on, normal job situations, husband and wife coming through, are looking for support as well because their rental cost is so high. They can pay their rent, or they can go without food, or they can get food and then be behind in their rental. So they're also approaching us. But generally speaking, we're finding that more and more people are doing it tough. So if we can provide that little bit of support, then it just helps them keep going. I think the other thing that we're trying to do at Gateway, more so than just providing food, is we provide a connectivity outlet. So this is people that are looking for just someone to journey with. They've been to get sound advice from their doctors, medical professionals, etc., but they really just want to hang out with someone that wants to hear their story, go the journey. And when people are in crisis, they don't make great decisions. So if they can come and get alongside someone that can walk with them through the store with them, help them with their grocery purchases, that can go a long way, just to help their mental health issues.
Do you think the state government should perhaps invest in more places like this to duplicate them across the state?
Yeah, absolutely. We think that our model is such that we provide a very dignified way to allow people to collect some low-cost groceries, rather than just giving them a hamper. We encourage them to value the resource and make their own choices, giving them the opportunity to purchase what they need rather than just what they are given. So it's a hand up, not a handout. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. You may want to move out that way, Tom. I'm going to get a bit political. So, thank you, Tom. Look, great to Jarrod Bleijie, member for Kawana, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Great to be at Gateway Care. Thank you to Tom, Bonnie and Lani and all the team here. This is an amazing organisation on the Sunshine Coast, and I know the 1,500 or so families they help each week. I would hate to think where those families would go if an organisation, a charity like Gateway Care, wasn't here doing the tremendous work they do, with 60 volunteers on the books as well. It's usually a very happening place, but it's closed today, obviously Monday. But I just want to give a shout out to Tom, Bonnie and Lani and all the team for the amazing work they do in helping vulnerable people on the Sunshine Coast, particularly with their low-cost groceries, and all the supermarkets and farmers that give to Gateway Care, knowing that there's zero waste here. It's all being used for people that need it the most. Second thing I want to talk about is it would not be a press conference on the Sunshine Coast if I didn't talk about Sunshine Coast heavy passenger rail connecting Biwa through to Caloundra, to Kawana to Maroochydore. Again, what we've seen from the Palaszczuk Labor government is nothing more than stunts. We now see they're consulting the community on 4 projects on the Sunshine Coast, 2 of which have already started. The Malula River interchange has already commenced. It has federal funding, state funding, and it's already commenced, and now the state government are out there now consulting with the community to see what the community want. Well, too late. The project has already started. This is nothing more than a delay tactic from the Palaszczuk government, who are now spending another $14 million on another business case for the Sunshine Coast heavy passenger rail. This project has been planned for 24 years. And if we talk about costs of living, how great would it be to have a proper public transport system on the Sunshine Coast with heavy passenger rail that is more affordable than car registration and putting fuel in the car and giving that option to the Sunshine Coast community. So again, it's blown out by time. And I fear that the more time that this project is delayed, we're going to have more blowouts. The Palaszczuk Labor government have a budget blowout problem. They have a blowout problem. We have seen it on project after project. And more concerning, recently in the last few days, we've seen Minister Mark Bailey have another blowout of $2.4 billion on train projects that he essentially misled Queenslanders. He put a press release out saying the cost of the project was $7.1 billion, but confirmed 2 days ago that he knew the real figure was over $9 billion. but he chose to put out a press release with the wrong figure on it. The other person who was on that press release was Premier Palaszczuk herself. It was a joint press release. The questions the Premier must answer today when she gets up at a press conference is, did she also know that the $7.1 billion figure was wrong? And did she then choose still to put out a press release and mislead Queenslanders like Mark Bailey did? The Palaszczuk Labor government have a blowout problem. I'm going to hand over to Ann Leahy, who is joining us today as the Shadow Minister for Volunteers, to give a good wrap of all the wonderful volunteer work that's happening at Gateway Care. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann Leahy, Shadow Minister for Volunteers. It's great to be here with the Leader, David Christofouli, and also Deputy Leader Jarrod Bleijie, and of course Tom, who's here running Gateway Care. Gateway Care have about 60 volunteers who come in during the week to actually help people who are impacted by the cost of living crisis that is happening. They are a social enterprise that is burning to help those people who are being impacted by their bills around the table, their increase in electricity, and also things like they're seeing their increase in insurance costs. And I've seen some that have had a 100% increase in their car insurance because youth crime is well and truly out of control right across Queensland. And I think the disappointing thing is for all of those volunteers who do so much in this community on the Sunshine Coast is to see the Palaszczuk Labor government spending over $2,000 per day on consultants. Now, that is money that should be going back to these social enterprises that are just burning to deal with the cost of living crisis that is happening here in Queensland.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, guys. Over to you.
We'll talk first about the news of stabbing yesterday. Obviously, this has been calls for people to review crime as well. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, there's not a Queenslander who would accept that a person should be walking around the street with knives. And there's not a Queenslander who will accept that there are 72 fewer police than there were 2 years ago. So we've got fewer police, weaker laws. Is it any wonder you've got a generation of crims who know that they are untouchable and they're conducting themselves in a manner as though they know they're untouchable? And they're carrying knives around with them. There's no consequences for that behaviour. It is a generation that know that their rights outweigh the rights of the victim. And it's time to turn that around. And we'll see in the days ahead about the alleged individual involved, and I won't go too much into that. But needless to say, we need a youth justice system that ensures that those who are a danger to the community remain behind bars, and those who can be turned around get all the support they can early on before a lifetime of crime. And at the moment we are failing Queenslanders and we are failing victims at both ends of the spectrum.
There are states, there are other states that have laws that are talking about having no people over under 18 or 16 years old to be able to buy knives. Do you think that Queensland should perhaps bring that into the as well?
We should always look at any initiative that can keep the community safe. The first point would be to turn around the decline in the number of frontline police officers, to stop the watering down of youth justice laws. These are things that we could do immediately. Now, of course, there are other things that we should always look at, but the fundamental reason why Queensland is ground zero in the youth crime crisis is because the decision was taken 8 years ago to water down the youth justice law. The government boasted about it. Well, the only people who are boasting now are the young crims who are putting their faces on social media while they taunt police, while they taunt victims. It is a generation of untouchables. They know that their rights outweigh the rights of the victim. They know that. They've grown up through the system. And we can look at all manner of initiatives to keep the community safe. But the fundamental tenet is weaker laws, fewer police. Is it any wonder we're in the middle of a youth crime crisis?
There are also reports that the 15-year-old involved in this actually skipped bail, skipped showing up to court the other day. Is that surprising to you?
Yeah, I'm going to be very, very careful not to talk about an individual, but I will talk about a system, and it's a broken system. It's a revolving door of a youth justice system, and Queenslanders are collateral damage from a generation of untouchables.
The state government is calling for more Queenslanders to come forward and be foster carers with more children coming into care. Does there need to be greater focus on early intervention?
Of course there does, and myself and Child Safety Minister Amanda Cam will be meeting with some of the providers for some of the residential care elements of it, some of the foster carers. I'll just make this point. We need to give kids every chance to have a loving and supportive environment, and we need to make sure that Queenslanders are the beneficiary of it by having a generation of kids who feel loved and empowered. And when we listen to people at the front line, we hear of a broken system when it comes to child safety, and we know that foster carers are increasingly under pressure. And we owe it to those kids as well as the community to turn that around.
The state government announced $42 million in funding for maternity wards.
Well, the question that needs to be answered is when. When will women be able to have a baby, where, when and how they choose in places like Cooktown, in Weipa, in Biloela, in Chinchilla? It's cold comfort to hear a government always talking about announcements when there's never timelines and people held accountable for delivering on those. We'll never stand in the way of any initiative that can improve the Queensland health crisis. But no one is a beneficiary of an announcement. They only benefit when a government delivers things. And Queenslanders are finding it really hard to trust the government when they are constantly looking for ways to make announcements to paper over the crises that people are living. So the focus today should not be on how much money is being spent. The focus should be on when will women be able to have a baby in these places again. That's the only thing that really matters. I think that's it. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. We'll have a bit of a look through.